Does it look like we got all our council members signed on?
I believe we have just about everybody. It looks like we might be waiting on a couple of council members.
Okay.
Just Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Velvet.
Well, I'm sure he'll be able to join us in a moment. I think we can proceed.
I just talked to him, Mayor. He's still trying to get back on again. He's tried to reboot his computer.
Okay. He's having some technical difficulties here today, that's for sure. There he is. Welcome, Councilmember Shade. Okay, I would like to call this December 1st, 2020 meeting of Charleston City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Del Chapo. Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
I'm here, Jennifer, sorry.
Councilmember Saccharin.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Waring.
Here.
Councilmember Seekings.
Here.
Councilmember Shade. Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember
Here.
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson.
Here.
Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. Now, if you would like to join us, Councilmember Appel will lead us with an invocation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my grandparents might be watching, so I gotta do this one justice. I thought I would share with everybody tonight a Jewish prayer that is a prayer for the sick. And given what we're dealing with right now in this country, as we continue to belabor through COVID-19 and the increased hospitalizations and some of the other impacts we're seeing, I thought it was timely. The name of the prayer is called Refuah Shalema. I won't read it in Hebrew, but I'll read it in English. It goes, heal us, Adonai, and we shall be healed. Save us, and we shall be saved. For you are our praise. Bring complete healing for all of our ailments, because God, King, a faithful and compassionate healer are you. Blessed are you, Lord, who heals the sick of his people, Israel, and everybody else. I added that part at the end, everybody else. And a cool thing about this prayer is Jews that are observant say this prayer 3 times a day, every day, as part of the daily prayers. And the prayer is really for the entire community and the entire world. So let's let that carry us into this meeting in a spirit of charity and praise for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate that. Now you can see over my shoulder here our flag. If you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America. And to the republic
Which it stands,
one nation
Under God.
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. So once again, with council's indulgence, I would like to add a brief recognition and presentation. I guess first, I would like to also recognize our staff led by Christopher Dowden. Many departments were involved, emergency management, police, and fire department. In opening last night, our City of Charleston warming shelter, we stepped up to the plate this year to do so because with COVID-19, some of the traditional warming shelter locations did not open this year. And so I got to tell you, I went by there last night and it was so uplifting. You could just see the warmth, the light shining through from our staff, from our volunteers who were serving a home cooked meal to homeless individuals, men, women, and children who came for a warmer place to stay last night. And so I just want to shout out to Christopher, and I can't name all the names, but all the staff who made that possible, and our volunteers. Hibben United Methodist Church from Mount Pleasant help us really with the whole setup and their system that they're accustomed to running. And last night, the church that stepped up to volunteer was St. John the Baptist. And so there were members from each church along with our staff. And it was really a heartwarming, uplifting event. I think we'll have more business there tonight because it's even colder and more people have now learned that we're doing this. So I wanted to thank them and recognize them. Councilmember Griffin.
I do think, Mr. Mayor, that you'll have more there tonight because I actually got a call from a couple of vendors down at the market today, and a few of the homeless people that hang out down there quite often. They didn't really understand the whole procedure, and it's important to give a big shout out to CARTA as well because they're running a free shuttle to get people to the warming shelter. So I made sure to let those individuals know that they can hop on the bus, they can get over there to the shelter, and they'll be taken care of. I know we only had 37, and we have a capacity of 80. So hopefully everybody on the peninsula, had that opportunity. I'd hate for anybody to sleep outside. It's been severely cold. The wind has been brutal. I just hope that we can get as many people in that shelter as possible.
Right. Thank you. And I noticed from the sign-in sheet last night that some of the individuals had been living James Island, West Ashley, even as far away as Somerville, and had come for shelter last night. So the other recognition, I'm not sure if all council members know this, it's a bittersweet situation that our dear Deputy Chief Naomi Broughton is retiring from the Charleston Police Department and joining our sister organization, the department at the College of Charleston. So I kind of feel like they're an adjunct department now with Chip Searson over there, and now Naomi joining him as well. And we're going to continue to work together. But I prepared a proclamation for the remarkable service that Naomi has given, not just to our department, but to our city and our citizens. So if you'll indulge me, whereas the city of Charleston Deputy Police Chief Naomi Broughton was born and raised in Charleston and attended Shakora High School. That brings back memories, where she developed an early interest in law enforcement through conversations with the school's officer. Whereas Naomi later attended Baptist College, she received a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice with a minor in PE. Later, Weber University, she received a Master's of Arts in Human Resources. Whereas in 1985, Naomi Broughton joined the Charleston Police Department, where she climbed the ranks of corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, served in various positions within the department. Whereas Naomi made Charleston Police Department history through her later promotions to captain, major, deputy police chief, becoming the first woman to ever serve the department in those positions. And whereas in her current role as deputy police chief, Naomi serves as bureau commander of the Operations Bureau, Special Events, Secondary Employment, and Special Operations. Whereas over her many years with CPD, Naomi has represented the department in many national and international exchange programs, including Australia, Holland, Israel, and the United States. Additionally, she served the city of Charleston as the department's LGBT liaison. And whereas in addition to her 35 years of service to the Charleston Police Department, Naomi is a retired Chief Marine Science Technician in the United States Coast Guard Reserve. In her 23 years of service, she obtained the rank of Chief Petty Officer and was chosen as part of the 1st Coast Guard Group to assist the Army in Operation Iraqi Freedom. In April 2003, she was chosen as the Coast Guard Enlisted Person of the Year. Whereas Naomi has served the city of Charleston with honor and distinction during her decades-long career in law enforcement. On behalf of the citizens of Charleston, I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Broughton for all she's done to make our city a safer place and for the remarkable impact she's had on the Charleston Police Department and our city. And Naomi, today is your day. Now, therefore, I, John J. Teckenberg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim today, Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, in the City of Charleston, y'all, it's Naomi Broughton Day. Naomi, you're on.
Mayor, thank you, City Council. Thank you so very much. I am honored to have worked for the City of Charleston. I have had opportunities that no one in their whole life will ever have. I've represented Charleston Police Department to the best of my ability, and in return have received numerous opportunities to receive some of the best training in this country and internationally. I just thank the City of Charleston for giving me those opportunities. I have forged friendships that I will cherish for the rest of my life, and hope in my new career we'll work closely with the College of Charleston to make Charleston the best city that it can be and continue the liaison with the police department. And I'm always available for anything I can do to help anyone, and look forward to that relationship to continue. Thank you so very much.
God bless you. I think of the Rotary motto, service above self. Naomi is selfless in her service to her brothers and sisters and to this city. She really always put others before herself, truly. And we're just blessed to have had Naomi as part of our organization. God bless you. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council.
All right, next is our public hearings. We have 4 on the agenda. They're really requirements of our budget process to have these 4 budget-related items up for public comment. And if it pleases council, we'll just take all 4 of them together since they're related to the budget. And Jennifer, allow anyone who signed up to speak on any budget matters to come forward.
All right, and Mr. Mayor, we have 6 citizens who are signed up to speak. We had on the budget public hearings, we had an additional 6 citizens that signed up to speak but didn't indicate which item they wanted to speak to. Would you like to set a time limit?
Yes, ma'am, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. All right, our first person who has signed up to speak is Emily Walter. And Miss Walter, if you're on the line, if you could press *6. Miss Walter.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, wonderful. I'll go ahead and dive in. So in the past 7 months, there have been constant calls for transparency from both the Charleston Police Department and the City of Charleston. From the police brutality on Sunday, May 31st, the calls from the community to shift funding away from the harmful police department. These calls have not only gone unanswered, they have been completely unacknowledged. In the Strengthening Charleston report, there is no mention of violence perpetrated against protesters. During public comment on the report, City Council members on the Public Safety Committee and CPD ignored calls from multiple individuals describing the brutality experienced on that day. It is mind-boggling to note there will be a $3 million allocation to CPD for new body-worn cameras when those devices did not seem to prevent any violence in May, nor has that footage been released. This lack of transparency is not surprising considering the fact that there is no detailed line item budget for the police department that's available online beside the 2020 budget draft document. And this only covers broad categories such as weapons or care for animals, both of which have been allocated over $20,000. On the contrary, it seems that the preventive programs have only been allocated $250 since 2018. In addition to this, there is no central location for the amount of funding that CPD receives through external grants from the state and federal level. In reading the minutes of every Ways and Means Committee from January to August, there have been 19 requests from CPD for funding from state and federal resources. It is unfair and undemocratic to not provide the public with clear information of where their taxpayer dollars are going, especially as it relates to armed police officers who have been shown through the audit and research by the Charleston People's Budget Coalition to have severe racial bias. I would hope in a year where our city is facing a severe deficit, council members and the mayor will think critically about where funding could be best be spent to support our community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next is Marcus McDonald. And Mr. McDonald, if you're on the line, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself. Marcus McDonald. All right, next is Frank Knack. And if you are on the line, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, sir.
Hi, everyone. My name is Frank Knack. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of South Carolina and a resident of Charleston. I live on James Island, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. So we are here in support of the call of the Charleston People's Budget Coalition for a reallocation of $5 million from the police department to community-centered programs, the list of which has been sent to the council members. And throughout this process, we've been asked consistently, why $5 million? What is this going to do to the overall public safety system in Charleston? And at the same time, there's been no effort to hold or to ask the Charleston Police Department that same question. And so we think that the question has been improperly asked this whole time, that instead of asking us why this $5 million needs to come out of the police department budget, which we've shown multiple ways why it should, the police department comes every year to this council and asks for tens of millions of dollars. This year, approximately $53 million. And there's no corresponding audit of how they're going to spend that money or how that money is going to better impact public safety. Just yesterday in the Post and Courier, Chief Reynolds talked about how outcomes should be, quote, connected to, or how the budget should be, quote, connected to outcomes, to metrics, to things like keeping our community safe, unquote. And yet, just looking at the last couple of years of crime rates in Charleston and overlaying that with the budget allocations, there is no correlation at all between how much money the city is spending on CPD and corresponding crime rates. And so we think it's important that this city council take a deep look at why they're thinking about giving over $50 million to the Charleston Police Department this year, when 1 in 3 people in this city has to choose between a roof over their head or other basic needs, when we have an acute shortage of psychiatric beds, when we have some of the least safe pedestrian ways in the entire country. Those things that are actually undermining community safety on a daily basis. Thank you so much for considering our request.
Thank you, sir.
Susanna Hinkle. And if you are on the line, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself.
Yes, this is Susanna Hinkle. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Yes, I'm here to talk about the police budget. A lot of great things have already been said, but discussing, how there are 53 million funds that are going to the police this year, where it doesn't make sense to be funding new initiatives that don't prove that they're going to prevent crime, that they're going to hold police accountable when they are not held accountable, even when there is proof, video proof of police brutality. So there should be more efforts made in order to prevent crime, like creating affordable housing, like creating a living wage for all city workers, creating more youth education programs, making a lot more resources available to citizens so that they're not forced to create or to commit crimes, because crime comes from need, not from I want to do this. Basic needs of citizens are not being met because we don't have reliable, affordable housing. A one-bedroom apartment in public housing is $1,000, which is not even reasonable when you get paid $7.25 an hour, the minimum wage. And it's not reasonable when your employer prohibits you from unionizing, so you cannot have a living wage. And it's not helpful when Congress continues to block bills that provide the universal health care in a pandemic and just goes home for Thanksgiving instead of passing more relief bills to enable Americans to stay home instead of working in the high-risk industries because they're not protected from eviction. So I'm also just trying to echo what the representative from the ACLU South Carolina says. Take $5 million of that budget that was supposed to go to the police and put it into more public assistance and housing program.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next is David Hanson, and I believe Mr. Hanson is on via Zoom.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the council. I'm David Hanson. I'm an associate professor of entrepreneurship and change making at the College of Charleston. I want to say that I, along with prior speakers here, support the Charleston People's budget. As an entrepreneurship professor, I specifically want to point out that any money diverted from the Charleston Police budget towards supporting entrepreneurship, particularly in African American communities, will more than pay for themselves. Studies and examples around the country and around the world show that financial training and supporting startups reduce crime and poverty. The American Express does a report annually on women-owned businesses. Women start more businesses than men. Women of color start more businesses than white women, and African American women start more businesses than anybody else, but they make the least amount of money because they get the least amount of support. The city could do so much to help, particularly women of color, in starting businesses and keeping the businesses alive, growing the businesses, which then leads to jobs and role models. And I know that the College of Charleston, people like myself would be more than happy to work with the city on trying to make a difference in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your offer.
Next is Marie Myers. And Ms. Myers, if you're on the line, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm here today because I'm upset that the city has not used this budget season to try and work towards a safer and more equitable city. The proposed budget attached to the agenda allocates about more than a quarter to the police department, while an eerily similar percentage of Charleston residents are facing housing insecurity. Council has made dismissive comments about external sources of funding to affordable housing being enough, but here's the thing. Outside of the city's $55 million, it's next to impossible to keep track of the money CPD receives from other sources. I know that the city has so much more to offer than putting a quarter of its budget into policing, and I'm asking you to do better. Policing experts have shown that increased police presence does not actually make communities safer, and neither do increased security cameras. Instead, that style of policing builds a culture of surveillance, confirmation bias, fear, and risk. Police presence in schools does not make students any safer either. In my district, more than half of youth arrests take place in schools and for things like disorderly conduct and disturbing school. This does not set an example of responsibility, only examples of fear and distrust. What does data say policing actually gets us in Charleston? More than a quarter of the city fund is going towards making arrests for low-level, nonviolent incidents at a rate of over 86%. It's going towards arresting Black individuals for low-level offenses at a highly disproportionate rate, including 6.7 times the rate of white people for marijuana possession, despite similar usage rates. Black community members are almost 3 times more likely to face use of force. I believe that Charleston has the potential to become a safer place for everybody, but it can't get there with so much of the budget aiding harmful practices. Instead, the $55 million could go towards a diversified and flexible network of first responders, affordable housing, youth educational programs, revitalizing our environment to keep city blocks from sinking, ending food apartheid, and more. I believe that diversifying how we spend our money and how we think public safety, truly considering the needs of our community, is the only way we can ensure Charleston is a livable city that is safe for its citizens and appealing to visitors for generations to come. And I support the People Budget Coalition's request to allocate $5 million from CPD to community affirming items. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then next, I'm going to call out some names that signed up, but they did not indicate which item they wanted to speak about. So this is just about the budget. AJ Williamson, if you wanted to speak on the budget, if you could press *6. Taylor Daniels, if you wanted to speak to the budget, please press *6.
Hi, this is AJ Williamson. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my phone was messing up. My name is AJ and I'm a student at the College of Charleston. I am also a team leader with the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, and I'm here speaking on behalf of KJUM. In October, we held our annual Community Problems Assembly, where over 600 people gathered to cast their votes on what problem we wanted to tackle together this year. We also voted on whether we should officially join the People's Budget Coalition. That night, over 500 people, representing 36 congregations and organizations in the city, cast their votes in favor of joining this coalition. We joined this coalition because every year, as an organization, we find ourselves attempting to tackle serious community problems that could be solved with a shift in budgeting priorities. The number one excuse given year after year for why best practices are unable to be implemented across the city is a lack of funding. We believe our city budgets are truly moral documents. When you hear that our city spends $343 per person on policing and $3 per person on housing and economic development, your response should be one of shock. How did we get here? In the recent article from the Post and Courier, Chief Reynolds shared that violent crime was currently on the rise. He said cutting the police budget at this time would make the city less safe. To me, that statement implies that during quote-unquote safer times, the police budget would decrease, but that is not the case. When you look at the history of funding of the police in the city of Charleston, even when crime was low or when crime was dropping, the budget for the Charleston Police Department was increasing. Why would that be? What does that prioritization tell the residents of Charleston? That no matter what, their tax dollars will continue to inflate a budget year after year that has not proven to keep them safe. What does keep us safe? Housing, healthcare, sidewalks, education, a living wage. One might even argue that the increase of the police budget year after year after year has helped cause an increase in violent crime because we have failed to invest in proven strategies that actually make communities safer. We agree with the chief that officers on the street need to be well trained and must conduct themselves in a way that is just and fair. We also believe that by taking a critical look at a $53 million budget, we could easily redirect $5 million toward community-led initiatives that will truly reduce crime in our city. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
next
ma'am.
is Taylor Daniels. If you would like to speak to the budget, if you could press *6. And this is just for the budget only. Corey Allen, if you would like to speak regarding the budget, if you could press *6. James Bessinger, if you would like to speak to the budget, please press *6. Joe Suthers. Leslie.
Hey, how's it going? Can y'all hear me?
We can.
Hey, so yeah, my name's Joe Suthers. I'm a resident of Charleston. I, like most of the other people on the call, just want to voice my support for the Charleston People's Budget. Yeah, I don't think that $5 million is really that big of an ask, to be honest. I think that money could be used a lot better and be put towards stuff in the community. I was at the meeting where y'all unanimously voted to remove the Calhoun statue, and that was a historic event. It was long overdue in my opinion, but historic event regardless. And for many Charlestonians, it was kind of a beacon of hope for racial justice in our city, sorry. But what's changed since then? The police department acquired 2 units in the Gadsden Green public housing complex when, as of a few weeks ago, there were 500 families waiting for placement in public housing. COVID-19, a disease that disproportionately kills Black, Indigenous, and people of color, is spreading uncontrollably while the federal, state, and local governments have passed the buck to individuals who are now forced to go to work for fear of losing what they have. The situation is even worse for incarcerated people who are already being treated as less than human and living in cramped, unsanitary conditions. I say all of this to let you know that it's time to put your money where your mouth is. If your commitment to racial justice in Charleston, a city built on stolen land using the labor of enslaved Africans, goes beyond performative gestures and optics, you'll reallocate $5 million from the Charleston Police Department and put it towards things like youth programs, affordable housing, safer infrastructure, healthcare, job training, and so on. Like I said, $5 million is a small ask when you consider all the violence perpetuated by police in Charleston and the rest of the United States. And make no mistake, that number is going to only go up with time. For now, this is just a start. The institution of policing has had centuries to show that they're capable of doing what's right, yet they fail to do so at nearly every turn. I think it's time to try something different. So thanks.
Thank you, sir.
And Leslie Armstrong, if you are on the line and want to speak to the budget, if you could press *6. This is for the budget only.
Hello. Yes, this is Leslie Armstrong, and I am here to speak about the budget. Like a lot of the other callers, I support the Charleston People's budget. I want my tax dollars. I'm a citizen of Charleston, and I pay taxes. I own property here, and I want my tax dollars to be spent to achieve real public safety. I don't want money just to be thrown at the police department. And when I realized that 25% of the city's budget goes to the police department and such a small amount goes to public service, I find that very disturbing. We've got problems in the city, real problems with affordable housing, reliable public transportation, a living wage. And those things are not going to be solved by throwing money at the police department. And we all know that research proves that using resources to address those social issues is a much more effective way than spending more money on the police. And we need to start realizing that and acting on it. I also want to live in a city where the police don't use violent tactics like pepper balls and tear gas against peaceful protesters. I want to live in a city where no one has to worry about not having a roof over their head or food to feed themselves or their children. I have one more thing I'd like to say, and this is about the budget. I regularly stand with those peaceful protesters who had pepper spray and tear gas shot out at them. And they speak out because they care about racial and social injustice. But those young women and men I have met, while I stand with them for racial and social justice, are some of the finest people I've ever known. Some of those young people, many of those young people who are considered thugs and troublemakers by many city officials, are the same ones who every single weekend hand out food and blankets and clothing to those in need. They are the same ones who provide Halloween parties and back to school supplies and homework assistance to kids who otherwise may not receive those things. So if the police and other city officials wanted to move forward with everything they say they want to do with equity and social justice and public safety, they would meet with some of these young people I'm talking about before they make any decision about what kind of city resources to use for the police and what kind of city resources. Let's make our city not just safe, but just. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that.
Is Mr. McDonald on the line? Marcus McDonald? All right, and then we received some comments, Mayor. We had 9 people who said not to raise taxes and to spend time investigating where there can be better control over spending and prioritize the most at-risk constituents. 8 people said there needed to be less policing and more investment in social services. 1 person said that salaries should be limited for each department, which could save over $2 million. 1 person said that, one moment, 1 person said that city workers should be paid and that the city should create flooding solutions and take care of low-income housing and education. 5 people said to reallocate $5 million from public safety by reinvesting in communities that have experienced centuries of harm. And 2 people said they were against cutting funds for public safety workers. And those were all the comments that we received. And I believe someone was on the line trying to speak. Mr. McDonald. Mr. McDonald, if you're on the line, if you could press *6.
Hello, City Council. Can everybody hear me okay?
Now we can. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Okay. Welcome. Thank you. As I was said before, my name is Marcus with Charleston Black Lives Matter. And thank you for allowing me the time to speak today. What's my time limit for today? 3 minutes?
2 minutes. Yes, sir.
Okay, 2 minutes. I'll try to make it quick. I don't want to reiterate anything everybody has said before, but I do want to address a common misconception that I've been hearing a lot in regards to crime and
ways to tackle that and make sure our city is as safe as possible and public safety is improved. There's large and gross misconception that we don't understand what crime is. And I just want to go ahead and nip that in the bud. I can't count on one hand how many people who I've lost to gun violence. And a lot of the kids that we mentor and a lot of the kids we work with have lost even more, and they're still haven't even turned to age 18. So it's something that we fully understand. And I just want to urge the city council, y'all, our pleas of the $5 million being divested from the police have fallen on a lot of deaf ears, unfortunately. But I do just want to urge city council to please, if you want to make cities safe, do not cut things in regards to the youth budgets. And we need to put money into these things, because there's so many different times where we see a lot of the people who are in these communities who do a lot of this work, who get so underfunded. And at the same time, you have these, police budgets are tremendously they're being given so much funds and so many resources. And you leave people, like, I'm not going to name drop, but people in these community centers who have to like pay off their own salaries to like buy stuff for the kids and go on field trips and what have you. And that's really how you ensure that these kids aren't on the street and they're doing their education. And that's what really matters the most. And I just want to reiterate that these, having 70 police, 80 more police isn't going to make the city safer. We've seen that before. That in 2020, we've seen, and I do want to quote Chief Reynolds on this. Yes, we've seen a rise in violent crime, but that's because of the pandemic and people are poor and people are struggling. Like that's the real issue. The issue isn't that we don't have police on every corner. The issue is that people are hungry. If you are going through stuff and you don't have the funds to meet the next, rent, like you might go out and do a scam. You might go out and rob people. And, granted, I don't condone crime. I don't condone people doing that, but you have to understand that that's why some people live. And wait, am I over time?
Yes, sir. Please wrap up.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. I mean, I was going to say, like, again, we understand crime is a thing. We understand that it's a big issue, but adding police on every corner is going to help that. What needs to be invested in is youth programs and equitable housing for people. And that's it. And that's my time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right.
That was all we had, Mr. Mayor.
We'll be back for the other public participation in just a minute, but that wraps up our public hearings in terms of hearing from the public. Now, our protocol for these 4 items is to go ahead and take a first reading on them because they're ordinance form. And the first 2 we passed unanimously at Ways and Means. So could I entertain a motion? We'll take 1 and 2 together.
Move for approval.
Second.
And there's a second. Any discussion on 1 and 2? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, I think we all voted the same way on 3 and 4. If we could take 3 and 4 together.
So move. Second.
And Mr. Mayor, is that as amended? Is that as amended?
As amended.
Is that
as amended?
Correct. Number 3 and 4 as amended at Ways and Means. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I believe Councilmember Brady had his hand up.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Brady.
I did. And I just wanted to, I know we spoke about it at Ways and Means, but I just wanted to put it on the record for people who weren't tuning in at 4 o'clock. And just several of us are going to vote no on this, including myself. But, I just wanted to speak to this budget amendment does not include pay cuts for staff. And, it's not to denigrate what our staff have contributed. But I know just there's people here on council who have had their jobs affected. I work for nonprofits. We've taken it on the chin on the budgets. Even MUSC during the height of the pandemic, when they canceled their profitable service lines, my wife had to take a 15% pay cut. The executives took a 20% pay cut. And those are frontline workers at the hospital treating COVID patients. And if we've asked them to sacrifice and our nonprofit folks have had to sacrifice, the service industry has been decimated. To not ask the city to do the same thing, I think is something that the public is looking at and watching. And I think, to Councilmember Seeking's point from Ways and Means, we can do better. And this is just the first reading. We do have another chance coming up in 2 weeks, and we'll continue to look for it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Did we record a vote on that already, Jennifer? Are we good on that?
No, I think we should probably vote again, just for the record.
Just for the record, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Is anybody voting differently than we voted at Ways and Means? Is that one way to handle it? Okay, we'll let the record show that's a 7-6 vote with the same council members voting.
Passing 7-6.
Okay, so next would be our citizens participation period. And I think we covered most people already in the public hearings, but I bet there's a few others out there who would like to be heard.
Yes, so for those that did not speak to the budget public hearing, we have 3 names. And Mr. Mayor, do you want to set a time limit?
2 minutes as well.
The first name is Taylor Daniels. And if you are on the line, if you could press *6. Taylor Daniels. Corey Allen. If you're on the line, if you could press *6. James Bessinger. If you're on the line, if you could press *6. All right, and then we received 4 comments, and they were in support of Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards. And that was all that we had.
Thank goodness.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm sorry those folks weren't able to log on this evening. So next up is our petitions and communications. We have just 2 appointees to the Tourism Commission. I do want to point out.
Second.
Thank you. I do want to point out that it's Roy Owen and not Roy Jones. You got the name right in your correspondence from me, but in the agenda, it's stated incorrectly. Roy Owen and Dr. Brumley McLeod. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 You guys have it. Next, we're going to discuss a proposed settlement agreement. I believe Julia Copeland is going to lead our discussion on this. Julia?
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The proposed settlement on the agenda tonight is a product of mediation, and that is a result of an appeal from a BAR denial. The applicant in that BAR petition was requesting an after-the-fact demolition of a cement tile roof at 145 Moultrie, with a secondary request that he be allowed to replace that roof with copper. It was denied by the BAR, and the applicant filed an appeal and requested pre-litigation mediation. We mediated this 2 weeks ago with staff, and we came to this conclusion, which staff has approved, or not approved, but they were recommending approval by the council, wherein the applicant will retain one of the 5 engineering firms that we proposed. And if that engineer corroborates an opinion that they've already provided from their own engineer, that the copper roof is actually better for the structure itself in that it's lighter and it doesn't damage the infrastructure, that they'll be allowed to put copper on this particular structure. So we're asking that you approve this proposal.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Julia. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm a little late in answering the question. I mean, I'm in favor of it, but this applicant had to go and basically make an appeal, get the right to put a metal standing roof on his house or whatever the structure is.
I think that's right, because he had removed the prior roof without permission.
Correct.
So he had to go to court?
Which was a tile roof, wasn't it?
It was a tile, cement tile roof. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Across from the park.
Yeah.
Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Copeland, for that explanation. I just had a question. Where was this property located?
It's at 145 Moultrie. It's near Hampton Park.
It's
Got it.
President and Moultrie Street, right across from Hampton Park.
Got it. Got it. So I just think that, you know, we've had the budget dominate our time over the last several weeks, but you know, when we come out of this and we start getting back into some of these zoning regulatory reform measures, you know, let's maybe, you know, flash this image in our mind of this case and talk about whether we need to have such stringent architectural regulations near Hampton Park. I get it, South of Broad, Hampton Park. I don't know. It's maybe a question worth having.
Well, just may I respond to that real quickly?
Yes,
just so you know, I have been talking to staff, and there are some proposed amendments we would like to suggest to council down the line about this particular zoning ordinance that gives the BAR a little bit more freedom to grant these kind of requests without having to go through all of these hoops.
Bravo.
Thank you.
I did like the tile roof, but.
It was attractive.
So I used to live next door, and it was a beautiful tile roof.
It really was.
But it leaked really badly. I tried to fix it myself, and then I helped hire some people to fix it, and it was.
They generally do over time, Mayor.
It was a mess. That roof was a mess. Okay. Next is our on COVID-19. Tracy McKee, you got anything for us?
Well,
Mr. Mayor,
Seeking has his hand up.
hand up.
Who did?
Seeking.
I've had it up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't see you, Councilmember Seeking.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor this, but Julie, I just really quickly, if you're still there, if you could come back into view. As with anything, when we have these pieces of litigation involving the BAR, before we get to any amendments to the ordinance that's already out there, that you might be proposing to council going forward, I'm always interested in, I think many of us are, particularly on the peninsula where the BAR does a lot of work, most of its work, in precedent setting. And are we doing anything here by approving the settlement that's going to give rise to some conflict between people who are going to put applications in and BAR rules and regulations that are out there? What are we doing ourselves here, sort of in the bigger picture, if anything?
Sure. Thank you, Councilman Seekings. Good question. And that is something we were concerned about going forward with this mediation. But I think this one is a little different in that the cement tile, the weight of it is actually damaging the interior structure of the house. So this is why we came to this this proposal. But I think the amendments that I think that we're going to be trying to push will help with that particular issue that you're raising right there.
All right. Well, if we can
The
do
after
it,
the fact demolition.
I know that y'all are busy, but again, whenever we have these things sort of between the cracks, it's nice to get them cleared up so we don't have to have these conversations and put more work on y'all when people get in conflict with the BAR.
Absolutely. Happy to try and push that one forward quickly for you guys.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Appel has his hand up.
Councilmember Appel, thank you.
I will be real quick on this. I'm using up my words for this meeting, but to my Councilmember Seekings' point, there's actually language in the Planning Act that specifically says that the settlement agreements that come out of zoning appeal mediation set no precedent legally. Now, practically, that's a whole other conversation, but there's actually some statutory language on point here that I've certainly dealt with over the years and is, I think, intended by the legislature to capture this issue. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Would anyone else like to be heard?
Just a point. I wasn't sure what Councilman Ross said. You said it doesn't set precedent, or that it does set precedent?
It does not set legally binding precedent according to the statute. Now, whether it's a practical matter, that's another conversation, but no legal precedent.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Julia. I appreciate your presenting that to us. So next is our update on COVID-19. Tracy McKee has a very short update.
Yes, very brief tonight since we were just together last week, but want to make sure that keep you guys updated on what's happening at the local level. So here we can see this is our daily cases and the kind of rolling 7-day average of cases at the zip code level in the city. I think probably you all were aware that we had, kind of a little jump in cases November 25th. If you see this nice little blue piece sticking up right here. That was kind of the biggest daily number that we've had really since July 23rd. So it's been quite a while since we'd seen a number that high. And so I've been talking to, kind of our medical folks, our partners, and really interesting talking about, how that's, kind of just a function of people getting tested before heading home for Thanksgiving, and kind of it really illustrates the prevalence of asymptomatic cases and kind of the need for more testing in general. So I thought that was kind of interesting to share. We are rolling out or migrating to a new dashboard. So here's kind of a look at one of the screens of that dashboard. This one really focuses in on the indicators that we're using. And just as a reminder, we are currently in phase 3 of a 4-phased approach. You can see kind of 3 of our 4 indicators right now are in that yellow zone. So obviously we're kind of using that stoplight approach. So green is good, yellow is cautious, and red is like, whoa, let's put on the brakes. So we've got a couple of things in yellow, a few things in yellow here. We're still just in that really steady, mild kind of burn of inclining cases. Always like to update you on city employee cases. Those have really remained static as well. So employee cases remain really, really good. So, kind of just in summary, local hospital COVID census is very low, remains low, which is good. So we're not concerned about that, but it is a lagging indicator. So once we start to see the impact on hospitals, things are already starting to escalate. So that is something to keep in mind. It's definitely good to check in with the hospitals and know how they're doing, of course, but it is kind of a lagging indicator. There's really concern from our, kind of medical advisors, if you will, that if we do see an increase due to Thanksgiving activities, that it could be the beginning of a double wave, since we're right here in the holidays. That could be pretty dangerous. We don't know if we're going to see that yet, of course. We just have to, the next, I think, week to week and a half will be pretty informative for that. So, the message that I'm hearing from all of our medical advisors is really, that it's really important right now that we stay the course, continue the mask wearing, physical distancing, hand washing. That's all just, extremely critical. We all have COVID fatigue, but now's the time to really kind of stick to our guns. Also, I think everybody knows vaccine progress is extremely encouraging. But again, we need to keep with those preventative measures to make sure that we keep our community transmission low. Hopefully it will start to flatten. That would be wonderful. And not when we can get off this kind of mild trajectory upwards, but that's where we are today. Happy to help answer any questions if anybody has any.
Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tracy, will the new site replace what you have, or is it just an addition?
So I have them both active right now, hoping that I don't want to take away something that people are used to. So I would love to get some feedback and make sure that the new site is capturing everything that people are really focused in on the existing dashboard.
Will the new site still give you the charts and the data by zip code?
Yes, sir. So it's just kind of different. It's broken up into pages and hopefully a little bit cleaner. So please take a look, and I'd love to get your feedback.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? All right, Ms. Herdina has a couple of ordinances for us to renew. Susan?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, council members. Hope everyone is doing well. We are asking for an extension of 2 ordinances and to extend them to January 15th of 2021. The first one is Ordinance 2020-134, previously passed, which had to do with restrictions regarding conditions and restaurant operations. It also had to do with face coverings and masks in public places and amplified music after 11 p.m. The second one is 2020-135, having to do with extending the emergency regulations allowing outdoor dining. Two things I wanted to mention real quickly. For those of you who get emails from the Municipal Association, they forwarded to the members today a letter from South Carolina DHEC applauding local governments for their COVID-19 efforts and urging local governments to continue to take steps to help minimize the impacts, including mask ordinances and social distancing. So I did want to mention that letter from DHEC. I thought it was important with regard to number 134. On 135, I wanted to give you a heads up that Chip has been working diligently with planning and the zoning folks, and there will be an ordinance for first reading on the next agenda that will propose a permanent rules and regulations for outdoor dining in the city. And so that would be given first reading at the next meeting, ideally second and third reading at our first meeting in January, at which time it would replace this temporary ordinance. So I would ask your support in both of these ordinances to be extended to January 15th, 2021. Thank you.
Approval, Mr. Mayor.
So move.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Councilman Jackson, did you want to be recognized as well?
I was moving for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Moving for approval. Okay. Any comments at all? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have
Nay.
it. And one nay. Thank you. So next is our council committee reports. First up is Public Works, Councilmember Waring.
Mr. Mayor, committee met yesterday, and the acceptance and dedication on the A1 passed unanimously, and I move its adoption.
So move. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Next,
The ayes have it.
thank you. Next on the agenda, you see the stormwater management update. A couple of grants on there. I'm gonna ask Mr. Fountain to come on, and particularly to address the aspects of the Earhart Tunnel where Councilman Seekings spoke of. We're trying desperately, Councilman Seekings, to get additional funding, which will probably be one of the most cost-effective major drainage projects on that peninsula if we can get that extension from the medical district to the Spring Fishburne Tunnel. Mr. Fountain?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Waring. The grant applications were for the Earhart shaft that we refer to sometimes as medical district tunnel extension, extending the deep tunnel system on the Spring Fishburne US 17 Septima Clark Parkway drainage project, basically down into a 27-acre basin of medical district centered on Earhart Street, kind of including the emergency rooms along Jonathan Lucas and the Dowdy Street corridor. This project is, the council had previously funded through city drainage fund money all the way through 100% design. We do have complete design drawings and permitted design drawings. The only portion of the design work left at this point is just finalizing the easements with MUSC, which are going to their December board meeting for review. But the actual design work is all completed. We have basically final plans that are biddable at this point for construction work if we need to. The two grant applications are through two different funding agencies. The first is through a HUD grant, a mitigation grant under the CDBG program. The second grant application is for a new FEMA grant, the BRIC program, which is something that probably most people have heard about at this point. It's a very heavily advertised grant. This will be their first year doing this. It replaces a previous PDM grant that was very hard to successfully apply for, and that the restrictions on the program were so that such that it was very hard for anyone to find fundable projects. So FEMA had trouble handing out the money most years on that work. They've kind of reset the whole program into this new BRIC program. It's funded at about $500 million. Typically, it's targeted at states that have had that have had federal disaster declarations. This year is a little bit unusual in that since the coronavirus has been a disaster declaration in every state in the country, everyone is eligible to apply for BRIC dollars. So that $500 million is theoretically split among the entire country at this point. So we've tailored our application to an amount that we think would be potentially winnable. The Earhart shaft is a very strong application for that project, and that it focuses, the BRIC grant is basically saying it's focused on community lifelines, which, while somewhat undefined at this point, really look at kind of primary transportation corridors, hospitals, major basic arteries of a city. Again, we'd be looking at a relatively small amount of money compared to the entirety of that project, plus the leveraging of the $200 million Spring Fishburne project. So we think we have a very strong application, but it's first year of an application process, so it'll be interesting to see how that does play out. But as Councilman Waring mentioned, we're continuing to push hard on the Earhart project, as we think it's the fastest, most cost-effective, and substantive way to improve drainage in the medical district that we have at our disposal. We're still looking at some conceptual options for other projects, but those, of course, are a little bit further down the road as they're still in concept stage. The other items on the agenda were the design work for Spring Fishburne Phase 5. Now that we have the $21.5 million award from the South Carolina Transportation Infrastructure Bank, this is basically the final design work to update the pump and associated mechanical and electrical infrastructure with the pumps for the updates to air emission standards, and some other building code revisions have been made since the original project came in place. This will basically go through the purchase, procurement of those pumps. Some of the manufacturers will have a 12 to 18 month lead time. So these are typically purchased and ordered in advance of a contractor being brought on board, and then used as owner supplied equipment to keep the project moving seamlessly on a time frame, instead of adding in an extra 12 to 18 month delay. So that's that portion of the project. And then the Church Creek flood storage. This is the kind of the Dutch dialogue approach towards Church Creek, of looking at how can we add flood storage in, similar to what Weston Sampson has modeled over the last 6 months or so, for adding in, the smaller properties, the buyout properties, things like the townhomes that the city has acquired from flood damage properties in the basin, as well as looking at larger kind of regional storage projects, which is something that we've been in discussion with some of the larger property owners, and has been a focal point for the recently appointed Church Creek Stormwater Authority kind of task force group for the basin, to try to coordinate that work. So this will be the design work to get started on where are the right properties and options, and what are the approaches for this. It's in coordination with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant work. There's roughly $1.5 million of federal money coming in as matching dollars for this project work. And we'll have a second professional service contract coming forward from the Water Institute of the Gulf for the public outreach, as they're a sub-grantee with us on this project. Basically making it a real focal point for getting the word out to the community about what we're doing in the basin, and how you can extend that into HOA properties and onto private properties and onto other commercial properties in the area as well. And Councilman Waring, I don't know if you wanted me to run through the project updates just very briefly or not.
No, I do want you to give the updates, because they're kind of important. In particular, people, listen, you need to hear what's going on in some of these drainage things in your district. We hear it on Public Works, and I'm telling you, it's exciting on some of the stuff that's going on. So yeah,
so I will try to be brief on this one.
I would call it exciting.
No, it is exciting. You know why? Because we've had too many pipes that's been broken, too many ditches that's been stopped up, and some of this stuff is getting worked on. And it's the opportunity for the citizens, not only you, but the citizens, to hear it as well. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you. So we did touch on the Earhart project. That's at 100% design at this point. We're just looking for the funding to move to construction on that one. Spring Fishburne Phase 4, which is the wet well and outfall excavation work that you see between the West Ashley bridges. Excavation work continues. We have most of our supportive excavation. The struts and bracers are fabricated and just about finished installing. Excavation is nearing the bottom target grades for the area, which you'll see if you drive by and look down, that it is quite a large hole at this point. We'll be able to start getting bottom slabs ready in concrete over the next few months, and shift out of the excavation work. The phase 5, obviously, we just discussed the procurement work starting for the pump station pumps. Low battery phase 1, all of what I would call the heavy infrastructure work at this point is complete. The wall, the walkway, the heavy concrete work is all complete and installed. The stormwater utility, water and sewer utility work, that's been installed. At this point, we're in the surface finishings. We're working on railing installations, granite curb, sidewalk, and then we'll be resurfacing or reinstalling, not just resurfacing, but actually completely reinstalling the asphalt roadway on both sides of the road, and adding in speed tables and some other components to the project. That is still on track to be complete in January 2021, so in the next 2 months. Low battery phase 2 is currently being bid by the pre-qualified contractors, so we'd look to see that phase basically moving smoothly into construction following the completion of phase 1 construction. King UG phase 1, that's the surface drainage improvements in preparation to bring more water to where we will install the pump station as phase 2. That project is out for bid right now. So we'll be, again, looking to award that contract at the beginning of the year and move into construction on the first phase of that project as well. Phase 2 is in its final design and permitting work right now. We're through our 30% plans and into kind of full-fledged final design and permitting work, which will continue for the next year or so on that project. Forest Acres, the utility relocation is now in progress. AT&T is on Playground Road, relocating their utility work. That'll continue for roughly the next 10 months, which will then follow with the city project to install the drainage improvements through that area. Market Street, we have our final DOT approval received. So at this point, the critical path is Dominion Energy working to put through their undergrounding plan so that we can coordinate that with them to move into a bidding for that project as well. The Cooper Jackson drainage improvement evaluation, that's the east side drainage work. We did complete the rehabilitation of approximately 10,000 feet of drainage pipe throughout that neighborhood. So there should be some immediate short-term improvements in drainage. It certainly is not going to fix the flooding problems, but it should be some significant improvement based on how much sediment we removed. The surveyor started yesterday doing their final survey work to basically build the data set to do computer modeling of what improvement projects will then be necessary. And we will identify some spots where we can do some additional pipe cleaning for short-term improvement as those surveyors work through the basin as well. The Barbary Woods Drainage Diversion Project, we're in progress now on preliminary design work. We've completed most of our wetland survey, some of our property acquisition survey work, and we're starting to lay into the actual design side of that project. The Johns Island drainage system evaluation, which is basically expanding with again the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the Dutch Dialogue work of looking at different zones of drainage on Johns Island, areas for preservation and areas for rehabilitation. So basically where we need drainage easement, where we need more drainage easement, and where we need to take areas that have been impacted and have projects to recreate the historical drainage patterns. That is now in progress. Data collections occurring on that work. The Windemere drainage improvement evaluation. The survey work is actually, the initial survey work is now actually completed on that one, and we're starting to build stormwater models. So that was a change even from yesterday's committee meeting, that we've basically got our initial survey field work done. They're starting to build out the computer modeling work to see what improvement projects are a good option in that area as well. DuPont Wapu, the improvement projects there, we're into the coordination with some of the property owners and initial design and permitting work on the first 4 improvement projects. The Concord Street pump station retrofit, we're in our conceptual work now, looking at what can be done to upfit that pump station and bring it up to full reliability again. The Church Creek flood storage projects, again, we just touched base on that scope that passed at Ways and Means today for the preliminary engineering work on that project. The Limehouse Brick Arch Rehabilitation Pilot Project, those contracts were approved last week at Council. We're in contact with our contractors and are planning to start that at the beginning of 2021 to start some construction work already, rehabilitating that arch. And again, we talked about that last week, but that's a really exciting project to leverage some existing infrastructure and shift it from liability into a significant asset for us. The Central Park drainage improvements, we're negotiating some scope options with our design consultant, and the county is preparing an RFQ for the engineering work that's basically being funded out of the city's CTC request for the last CTC project round, and that's improvement work on one of the Central Park road crossings on the western portion of the basin. The Sherwood drainage improvement project, we did remove the final tree that was causing some challenges with drainage in the area. So at that point, the project is complete. We'll continue with stabilizing that system and evaluating it over the next couple of months, but it looks like we're already seeing some significant improvements from the recent heavy rainstorms in that area. And then two new projects that are underway are the Dowden area evaluation and the West Pawnee area evaluation. So those are field survey work is now in progress on both of those. And then following that initial survey work, we'll be meeting with the property owners to go over some of the data that we found during that survey work to develop the next potential projects in those areas. And that's what I had for you today, Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Fountain. On the first, Councilman Gregory.
Yeah, question. I can't remember which meeting, but a couple of meetings ago, we talked about the fact that utility companies sometimes hold up our projects considerably. And as a result of that, our cost goes up. And I thought that we were going to look into whether or not, as a result of these delays, that these utility companies may have some liability.
Now, our legal can touch base on this, but my understanding is when we revisit the franchise agreements, that type aspect can be written into it.
Yeah.
I don't know if legal want to touch into that or not.
And if they don't, Councilman Waring, I can certainly
Okay,
follow up with either you or Councilman Gregory afterwards, and we can
Well,
talk
if you'd
about it
be
more
kind
detail.
enough to if you'd be kind enough to follow up with Councilman Gregory, I'd be appreciative.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Now, I know it's been a long report on this part, but that report basically touched almost every council district in the city of Charleston. It's an opportunity for all of us to keep up. So when people say we're not doing anything in drainage, you can say, "Oh no," and let me tell you why. Councilman Cheyenne.
Yeah, and going back to what you have talked about before, Councilman Waring, and I just haven't checked the website recently. Is there a way that we can just sort of list these on the city's website with the value that it has, cost value on it, and the district that it has? Because I kind of comment it wasn't exciting, but it is important. This is critical work that we're doing for all of our citizens throughout the city. Some of these are things that most of us have been working on very hard for a number of years to get into the pipeline, and we're seeing the fruition of all of that. And Matt has done just a wonderful job, he and his team, of following up on that. Some of these are huge projects, some of these are small, but the impact is tremendous on every one of these for our citizens. And so if we had an ongoing list, it's sort of like a moving target progress report that where these things are from time to time. I don't want to tax Matt any more than we need to do that, but it certainly is just important for the community to know what we're doing and the progress that these things are going through. Like you said a few moments ago, unless you're on the Public Works Committee, we get these almost every other week, these updates. And so we're used to hearing these things from Matt, but for the general public and for our other colleagues, having this readily available would be a big help to everybody, I think.
You're so right, Mr. Councilman. Mr. Mayor, that's the extent of our report. And thank you, Mr. Fountain, for your depth of knowledge on all these projects.
We need to vote.
Yeah, you're right. Well, that's just information right there.
I think Councilman.
No, you're right. We need to vote because we got to carry the grant application.
Couple of seconds, have his hands up. Councilman
Sacklin.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo Peter's, our Councilman
Council Member Shade's point, being able to post that stuff in a digestible format for constituents, extremely helpful. And I know, Matt, you've been really good engaging with some of my constituents. And when you do, and I read those emails, it's clear work is getting done. So I guess how can we package that in a way that's it's easily digestible so we could share it with our folks?
I think we've already been working on that. Matt or Tracy, can y'all?
Yeah, I can certainly jump in, Mr. Mayor. And we have, yes, we basically have been working through templates to update the whole kind of website to present a more citizen user friendly interface. There is information on there now, but it can be hard to find. We have done the Spring Fishburne project and the Low Battery project are very kind of well laid out, attractive, informative websites. And now what we're doing is working on expanding that into all of the other projects as well. So those were kind of our templates that we were able to set up and use as examples. And now we're working with a dedicated staff member to basically do that for all of the project work we have, so we can see it and it can be readily available and viewed. Because you're right, it's important if we're doing all this work and no one knows what we're doing because it's all below ground, it's hard to remind people how helpful it is.
Thanks, Matt.
What do you think the time frame is, Matt, on first quarter of next year, or to get all that done to where we'd have them all entered?
My target is first quarter of next year. It a little bit starts to be like juggling and how many times can you grab the ball and throw it back up in the air before you drop it. But yes, I think we do have someone set up at this point to basically work on this at least half of their time in the office. So I think we'll have a very good shot at getting the vast majority of this up and running by end of first quarter.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Brady.
Yeah, and just a follow-up request on that. Would it be possible to break it down by areas of the city? So as people are looking at the projects that are taking place, do it by area, and then what council districts are impacted by that. I think, when we run down a list, especially at the rate we've had people moving to the city and whatnot, they may not completely know what the areas are in the council districts, but I think it would help kind of delineate that for people.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We'll have it map based so you can see it and overlay the council districts on as well.
Great, thanks, Matt.
Great. Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Brady just brought up a point that I've been sort of grappling with for years. When I was the director at HUD, we literally had to break our budget down by congressional districts so that each congressman would know how much of HUD funding has gone into their particular district. I don't know how difficult that would be if somehow we were able to do something similar, not the same, but similar across the board, not just for stormwater, but for many of our products that we put out there. It would be an easy access for each councilman to say, this is the amount of dollars that has been spent in District X, and this is what it's been spent on. And I think that's what Councilman Brady is getting to. But I think that if we could try to come up with that, and it's not that easy to do, especially when you start talking about police departments, fire departments, and all that kind of stuff. But at least we can say what stations are where, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it would really be helpful to each one of us if we had some kind of cheat sheet so that when we are talking to our constituents, we can be a little more specific. Okay. Just a suggestion. I don't know how difficult that could be across the board, but Mayor, it would be great if we could look into something like that.
We'll think on that. Some kind of inventory of assets and project per district.
I don't know, Mr. Mayor.
You went to mute, Councilman.
You went to mute.
Yes. I don't know, Mr. Mayor. We may have to kidnap Councilman Seeking so some of us can get some money to come in.
Yeah, because we know where the money's going.
We all in this together. We all in this together.
I mean,
I'm going to reserve comment on that.
I mean, a lot of it's correlated with need, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So do we need a motion to approve this committee report and what's in it?
We move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Aye.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it.
Mr.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
I just wanted to point it out. They wanted to rush me through the report, and when they started hearing the fact points, then they started asking questions.
Council,
I don't even know if a report like that needs approval, but it's so comprehensive, we might as well give it to them anyway.
thank you, Matt, for that report and update. I appreciate it. All right, Committee on Ways and Means, Councilmember.
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval as amended, and I would request that the clerk of council would reflect the voting with regard to the budget, particularly those that were in opposition.
Absolutely.
I move for approval as amended.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, the ayes have it. So, I guess having our meetings so close together, we didn't have a lot of committee meetings. That's all for our committee meetings. Next, we have bills up.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we take items 1 through 5 together, and I'll move that we approve those 5 items.
Second.
Take out number 5, please, separately. It needs an amendment.
Okay, 1 through 4 together.
1 through 4, then I'll
Second.
amend my motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on 1 through 4? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, the ayes have it. Now for third reading and
So moved.
ratification.
Okay.
So move.
All right. And
May I be heard on that?
Councilmember Seekings?
So, Mr. Mayor, and those, I don't know who made the motion and seconded, but I would ask that you accept a amended motion on that, and that would be move for approval, not as amended, but as originally read before this committee for first reading, and
Councilmember
give it
Seekins,
second reading.
we're doing the third reading.
Sorry,
of
we haven't
items
completed
1
our
through
vote
4.
for third reading for 1.
Give good number 5 here.
Be with you in just a second, Councilmember Seekings.
I'm sorry.
Third reading and ratification of items 1 through 4. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, Councilmember Seekings, number 5.
I gave you a preview. So I would move on number 5 that we give it second reading, not as amended, but as originally read before this council and approved.
Second.
Okay.
Can we get it, Mr. Mayor? Can we have
keep amendment or keep the ordinance as it was originally proposed to us and not the amended version? I call this door number 1 versus door number 2. Councilmember
Mayor,
Griffin.
can legal explain one more time the difference between the amended version and the original?
Sure.
Thank you.
Who would like to handle that for us? Susan or?
Mayor, I think Janie's gonna.
Janie Board. Janie.
That'd
yeah.
be me. I think I'm on the hot seat. So ordinance number 1, that was the sampling ban in the very limited area there on King Street that was originally proposed.
Right.
Second ordinance is a sampling permit ordinance. It would allow you to sample anywhere in the central business district until you've received 2 written violations of the city code. And then that would put you into a permit situation where you would have to install cameras to record your sales on the public right of way to ensure that you were following the city's ordinances.
Did we make any other changes? You know, like I brought up before, I mean, you could be selling something for $1 and technically you could be out there selling for $1, correct?
Currently under the city's ordinances, yes, you could do that if you had a peddler's permit.
Right. So basically this only gets rid of free sampling.
Right. This ordinance is directed at the offering of samples on the public right of way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. Ms. Borden, could you just then remind us what would be the violations that they would most typically be cited for in order to have that regulation enforced?
It could be any violation of the code, but the ones that we routinely see are illegal encroachments, blocking of the public right of way, aggressive solicitation, those violations that are related to their activities on the public right of way.
And how would you all predict that those violations, would be cited? Would the customers need to complain? Would it just be random chance that livability would be in the vicinity? And in terms of, trying to actually put out to regulate the worst of the behaviors that this ordinance is intending to having a hard time sort of figuring out how it would actually be an effective change to have the opportunity to do everything right until you don't. And then when do you get caught when you don't? How would that actually happen?
Dan, do you want to address that maybe? Dan Reach?
Yes, sir. The option number one would be the most inclusive, the option that would be more productive versus the second option. We would be able to enforce it at our standpoint with photographs more easily if it was a total ban versus the permitting process. Now, the permitting process is nice, but it's much more difficult to gather the evidence and create a case against the particular business versus the total ban would be very productive for us to be able to enforce, gather evidence, and prosecute.
All right.
Truly, I understand.
Thank you.
Satisfy that question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to be heard? And I'll go back to Councilmember Griffin. Councilmember Griffin.
I just want to say I am just sick and tired of banning things. I've never dealt with a government that bans so many things. To me, it's just ridiculous. We're supposed to be giving our citizens rights, not taking them away. So, I would probably go for the whole permit thing, but these bans all the time and looking for ways to write tickets and make money, just to me, it's just cheap. So I'm going to vote against it if we're going to go that route.
Well, thank you, sir. Councilmember Seekings.
Just very briefly in response to that, and I generally agree, but in this instance, what we're doing is we're limiting a predatory practice that hurts business in our most key and central business district, our billion-dollar corridor, and all of the businesses, save the ones that are engaged in the predatory practice, have asked for it. And if there's ever a time that we should install something that helps our business grow back to where it was, now's the time. And this is one of the things that we absolutely should be doing. And I would encourage everybody to vote in favor of this.
Councilmember Shade.
Yes, sir. I just want to echo what Councilmember Seeking just said. This is to protect commerce, and to make sure that our entrepreneurs are protected from predatory practices. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and I would just offer that, I think it's important for us to pass one or the other of these versions. After a lot of, I want to compliment Janie and all the work that went into developing the permit type ordinance or system. But honestly, I think for the offense that it's a bit bureaucratic and complicated. And as Councilmember Gregory pointed out, when this matter first came to council some weeks ago, that if we pass the simplified version, if there are any unintended consequences, we can always come back and put the permitted version in place or some modification thereof. But I would recommend we go ahead with the simpler version and get something done on this. Councilmember Appel. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just point out that this is a measure, this is an ordinance that developed out of the Central Business Improvement District, the commission that was set up this summer. And one of the big knocks, you know, you hear from time to time about commissions is that's where you just get a bunch of people sitting around and talking and nothing ever comes out of it. Well, this is something discrete that came out of that commission that didn't come from my, you know, brain or any other elected person necessarily. It came from the merchant stakeholders on King Street. This is something that they have spoken about. This is an issue that they deal with every day, where people get unfortunately harassed on the street and people have to literally cross the street and avoid businesses and entire stretches of King Street to do it. And I think that there's been some news reporting recently, some very impressive local news, investigative journalism over some of these issues. I think they speak for themselves. And the city is going about addressing this issue in a direct way. I tend to agree with Councilmember Seekings. I think door number one, as the mayor put it, is much more direct, much more elegant, will involve much less staff, time, resources. You know, we had a long discussion earlier today about the budget and staff time and things of that nature. This is a lot more elegant. And we ban things all the time. You can't open a strip club on King Street. You can't open a short-term rental unless you satisfy 20 different requirements, depending on where you are in the city. The city has been banning things and regulating things probably since the United States was founded, to be honest. So we ban things all the time. It's a part and parcel of government. This is nothing different. We're responding to a very discrete problem, and just want to thank the Central Business Improvement District stakeholders for coming up with this, working through these issues, and there's more to come. Minimum parking requirements, for example, you may have heard of it. We got a lot more to come out of this group, and I look forward to working with everybody in the coming weeks and months. Thanks.
All right, Councilmember Jackson, and then we'll try to call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I totally agree that the door number one is the right choice for us to make tonight, and for all the reasons that my colleagues have expressed. So procedurally, how do we go about that? Did Councilmember Seekings already make a motion to?
He made the motion, yes. If we vote aye, we will approve door number one or the simplified version.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it will be second reading.
And that will be second reading, correct. Then we'll give it third. And before we vote, I do want to thank, I see her picture, Meg Thompson, for leading that Central Business District Commission. She's been doing a terrific job. Any other comments or questions? I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification.
Second.
So move.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The
Nay.
ayes have it. We have no bills up again for first reading, so unless there's something further to become for us tonight, our next regular meeting will be December 15th in 2 weeks. Jennifer.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to point out that item M1 under bills up for first reading, that is going to be withdrawn because it's gone past the 365-day limit. So that will be coming off of the agenda. It's noted as to be withdrawn.
Would you like a motion from council to withdraw the motion?
We don't have to, it will automatically come off. I just wanted to let everyone know.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting us know.
Hey, Jennifer.
Business, y'all.
Jennifer?
Stay warm tonight.
We
Yes.
have another question, Mr. Mayor.
Can you get the dates on some of these deferred things?
Yes.
So we know, because a couple of them we may want to bring back up before they fall off.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Is that the only one that's to be withdrawn?
For tonight, yes. And I believe Mandy's on the line as well. I think it only applies to amendments to the zoning ordinance. Some of the other ordinances, that rule does not apply. I don't know if Mandy is still on. So it's different depending on what the ordinance is.
It's only zoning ordinances, and it comes off a year after it's initially proposed or the petitioners received, whatever it is. And sorry, Mandy, I see you now. She's going to kill me.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Councilmember.
Thank you. Had to talk.
Councilmember Mitchell, did you have something for us?
No, I just was saying that Councilmember Griffin had a,
Oh, gotcha. Any further business? Councilmember
Councilmember
Sack?
Saccharine.
Sorry, just one quick question. Mask ordinance, when does it expire?
January 15th. We just extended it to January 15th.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rappel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real quick. Just want to remind everybody or anybody that's still listening, the budget's not final. We still have time to come up with some additional cuts potentially. If anybody's very interested about 2 mills and not having that happen, the challenge is on. The gauntlet has been thrown. Come up with it, and let's take it up.
Okay, well, having heard that, could I respectfully ask that council members, if you have some specific recommendation, to please go ahead and send it to us so we can have a little time to review it. So by the close of day on Friday, please either send us something or let us know you got something coming. I'd appreciate it. That'd be great. All right, we stand adjourned, and I'll see